And if you know that you are doing everything right and being authentic to who you are, then you won't be missing out.
It's all about alignment, really.
It really is.
It's about alignment to your goals and making sure that you have the structure to and a checklist to make sure that you're doing the right things. Welcome to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed last week's episode, how you can demonstrate leadership when you're not a leader. If you haven't had a chance to watch or listen to it yet, make sure to check it out or send it to a friend or colleague who's interested in growing their career.
Today, for episode 4, we are going to be talking about the 5 fears that break careers, and a bonus fear too.
Ooh,
I know.
Stay tuned.
This is a fearful episode. So we've seen these fears, play out for ourselves, right? When we've been in job search, when we've been in our careers, when we've been in entrepreneurships, we've seen it play out for our clients, for colleagues, for bosses. And a lot of them are self-imposed limitations for what's even possible out there, right? Especially when you're in a bad work environment, a toxic work environment, or if you're in the middle of a transition, right? Because let's be honest, when you're in the middle of a transition, if you're looking for that next job search, right, or next career in a job search, things are moving, things are shaking. You're in the middle of change, and change is scary, right? I mean, think about it. When was the last time we're in the middle of a change right now.
Changing all the time.
Let's be honest. Right now, Jack and I, we're in the middle of changing things up in our business. And while that's exciting, right, we're excited about the potential of offering new and exciting things for our clients to help more people. It's also really scary because of the fact that when you go through a change, you're thinking about possibilities that don't exist and leaving your comfort zone. And so when you have these things, your fears become curated by life, environment, personal experiences, by maybe change not going as well as you wanted it to go, right? The motivations that you have, the uncertainties of what the future holds. And at some point, right, we have to face those internal challenges in order to see that next level of success, in order to face those fears, to go through the change, and in order to see success. So if you want to be successful, if you want to move forward in your career and advance in your career, right, which is what we're doing, the Career Advancement Academy podcast, then reflecting on some of these fears and being self-aware of them can really help us untether those limits that those fears give us and help you go achieve new heights in your careers, right?
Fears, overcoming them is the key to finding new levels at every point.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to overcoming fears, that feels really scary to say, right? Like, oh, just overcome your fears. Oh, okay, simple enough, sure.
Yeah, the only challenge you got to take on is you, and yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the hardest thing you're ever going to do.
That's the hardest thing. And so why we're having this episode and why it's so important is that the biggest part and the first step that we have found to overcoming fears, or really any type of growth, is self-awareness, right? Wouldn't you say?
Awareness is key. First
Awareness
step.
is key, because sometimes when we are approaching a new thing or a change, we feel these fears creep up, but we don't know what they are. And so what do we do? What do you do?
Well, I like to actually just sit with them for a minute. I will sometimes just give myself a 2-minute timeout where I'll kind of analyze what is happening. What thoughts am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? What's this connected to? Is this connected to something from random from my past? Is there something popping up into my head that I'm thinking of that potentially could illuminate why I'm potentially feeling this way that's maybe connected to this moment? And usually when I do that process and give myself that time, I'm able to uncover where that connection is, and then all of a sudden that energy dissipates because I've labeled it, I understand it, and also I get where it's coming from, and so I can release it.
That's awesome. Now, for those of us who are not as enlightened as Jack is right now, sometimes when fears come up, we don't even want to address it. We don't want to sit there for 2 minutes and sit in our fear, right? That sounds scary, right? And so what do we typically do? And absolutely, Jack and I, right, when fears come up, we we have gotten to the point where we get comfortable sitting in it and figuring out why they come up. But old self, right? Old Jack and Kara, I don't know about you, Jack, but me, I'm compartmentalizing.
Run and hide.
Running and hiding, right? And I don't know about you if you're listening or watching this podcast, but if a fear comes up, what do, right? There's a lot of different ways that we as humans, right, our brains react when fears come up. We compartmentalize, we push it away. Oh, I'm not scared. Oh, that's nothing. Or we numb out, right? We use things like food or drugs or alcohol or TV or distractions or going out or whatever it is in order to numb that fear so that we don't have to deal with it, right? But what we have found in our lives and the lives of people that we work with, talk with, communicate with a lot is that they're not going away, right? Whether you numb it out, you push it away, it's still going to be there. And in those dark, quiet moments when you're left alone with your thoughts, they creep back up, right? And so that's why now Jack and I, when they come up, we address it head on. Hey, I'm stronger than this fear.
At least I like to tell myself I am.
We like to try. We like to try. We like to be in control of it. But that's why we say that self-awareness is that first key of identifying what that fear is, so that at the very least, if you identify what it is, then you can make an action step further, or at least get curious as to why it's coming up, right?
That's why awareness is key.
Exactly. Awareness is key. So when you are embarking on advancing in your career, going into a job search, here are going to be the 5 plus a bonus or 6 fears that tend to come up specifically in a job search or when you're really trying to advance in your career. And we want to go over them so that you know what they are and you can be prepared for them. So Jack, what's the first one that comes up?
Fear of rejection. Oh my goodness. Who loves rejection? Not me. I don't know anybody who loves rejection, but job seekers consistently fear the possibility of being rejected by potential employers, right? It's part of the reason why we all love applying online, because it's a little easier to take rejection not to the face. But the fact is, this fear stems from concerns about not being qualified or feeling like we're not enough, or maybe we don't meet all of the wants of this potential dream opportunity. And none of us like to feel less than. We never want to feel like we're not capable, right?
Yeah. And honestly, at the end of the day, this fear of rejection, it's not just in the job search, right? Or in your career. This is a big fear that most people have. People, I don't know about you, but me, I want to be liked. Do you want to be liked?
Yeah, everybody wants to be liked.
Wants to be liked. And so having that rejection, that no, thank you, not for us. Oh, that hurts, right? So how can we flip this fear into something that's more empowering? What I like to say when it comes to a job search specifically is that rejection is, and this is so cheesy, but rejection is redirection, right? At the end of the day is, if all of the companies that you're applying to, if all of the people that you're talking to say, yes, oh my gosh, Joe, so-and-so, I need to talk to you, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're like, holy crap, I don't have enough time in the day, right? So when it comes to that point where when we can accept the no's are actually gifts, like, oh, thank you, you're not wasting my time anymore. You've now freed me up to go find that yes. That becomes so much more empowering, and you've put the power of control back into your hands instead of giving it to other people, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're conducting an authentic and strategic job search, you are trying to find people that you align with. You don't want to go and chase someone who doesn't want to be around you, right?
Everybody wants to be wanted.
Yeah, but everyone wants to be wanted by the right people, right?
Of course.
Yeah. What's the next one, Jack?
Next one is the fear of uncertainty. And this one is also very scary. Honestly, this one creates things like procrastination, right? This one keeps us stuck in our tracks because so many of us, and especially job seekers, fear the unknown that can come with changing jobs or starting a new career, relocating, having to learn a new process, a new way of doing things, right? We're not necessarily sure on how we're going to succeed in that. So that unknown, that gap in the mental space, the brain needs to fill that gap. And what it fills it with is your fear of, are you going to be capable? Are you going to survive? It's that fight or flight that it's triggering in us. And that's why uncertainty about job security, company culture, and career advancement ultimately comes down to with increased responsibilities and demands, which leads to concerns of being able to maintain healthy work-life balance. As we continue to take more on over here, well, now all of a sudden we're like, oh, well, the rest of my life's getting a little bit off kilter. I don't know if I can keep doing this, if I can maintain this. Is this healthy for me? Is this healthy for my family? Right? And now all of a sudden we're more of a quagmire than we ever were before, because we're questioning everything and we're not sure.
Mm-hmm. I find that the fear of uncertainty tends to creep up most in people who are in toxic work environments, or in people who are in work environments where they're no longer aligned, right? And here's why it creeps up is because they're in such a bad situation for what they are in now, where if you're misaligned, right? Maybe you were aligned at the beginning when you took this job, leadership changed, the duties changed, your team changed, your boss changed, something changed, you changed, right? The pandemic changed. I don't know, something happened and you're no longer aligned at this company. And you can feel when you're no longer aligned because you walk in every day and you are resentful. Like, gosh darn it, I gotta walk into this dang company again, and oh, so-and-so's getting her coffee like she always does, right? Like, you are constantly feeling resentful and for things that maybe didn't bother you a year ago or 2 years ago, right? That's when you can kind of tell that you're misaligned. The work that maybe brought you fulfillment and made you feel like you were making an impact no longer brings you fulfillment. Other things in your life are starting to get affected, right? Your mental health, your physical health, your relationships, your time boundaries, your personal boundaries, right? All of these things are starting to get misaligned or pushed or not feeling that great. And what tends to happen is that fear settles in that, well, at least I have a job. Well, the devil I know, if I jump, am I jumping from the pan into the fire? Right? And so all of these uncertainties, and what tends to happen is all of those fears are focused on the negative, right? If I leave this negative, terrible place, I might go into something that's worse. At least I can suffer, quote unquote, through this and afford to take care of my family or send my kid to college or X, Y, and Z, right? But not a lot of times people focus on, well, what if the inverse is true? What if you take the risk and you leave and you find a company you actually are aligned with? What if you start feeling like you're fulfilled again? You're making an impact. Your relationships start getting better. You start loving your spouse a little bit more. You start loving yourself a little bit more. You're actually not resentful of Susie getting her coffee anymore, right? So all of these things, uncertainty is true, but I tend to find that the worse the situation that you're in right now, the harder it is to take a leap because of that uncertainty.
I completely agree. And uncertainty, it's almost like kind of creating a new window, right? Like when you're opening up on a web page and you've got, say, Google Chrome open, and we'll just keep opening tabs, opening tabs, opening tabs. Eventually, with all this uncertainty, with all these tabs running in the background of you not feeling great, well, guess what's going to happen? It's going to create this environment of you not feeling great, you not feeling uncertain, feeling certain about yourself. And guess what's going to come from that? Going to create a lot of turmoil, potentially burnout, potentially high anxiety and hesitation. All of these things are not good for you in your career. Yeah. Carol, what is number 3?
Yeah, and before we get to number 3, one of the ways, if you're really uncertain and you're not in a good place and your brain is giving you the, oh, but if you leave, it's going to be worse. I encourage you, try the exercise of the inverse. What if I do leave and it gets better? What if I find a place and I actually feel aligned again? What if I end up making more money? What if my relationship does get better, right? So when you're playing or your brain does that what if and it's the negative, try challenging it with the inverse of the positive. Okay, the third one is fear of imposter syndrome. Oh, I like to also call this one fear of failure, right? So when you're aiming for a career advancement, if this is something that's really important to you, if you're a high achiever, you may fear that you're not truly qualified or deserving of that next level role, or that if you do get up there, you're going to fail, or that people are going to look around you and be like, what the hell are they doing up there? Right? It's really truly feeling like you're not qualified or deserving of those upper level roles. It's feeling like a fraud despite all of the evidence to the contrary of your achievements. And it can really hinder your confidence and your progress. And this is something that a lot of people suffer from. It's somewhere around 80 something percent. And
Wow.
especially if you're a woman or a person of color.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Do you happen to know why it might be more prevalent for women or people of color?
Absolutely. And the reason why it's more prevalent for women and people of color is because of the fact that they're already working against societal norms that are set up
Wow.
against them.
That's tough.
Yeah. So not only do women and people of color have to work so hard to achieve, that once they already get there, the system is not set up to support that achievement. So
Mm.
that once they're there, it's like, oh my gosh, I worked so hard to get here. I deserve to get here?
Yeah.
Is everyone else thinking like,
Huh.
how did I get here? All that other stuff. It's really a toxic, well, one, we won't get into the culture of the system and all that other stuff because I could go on for a whole nother episode, but imposter syndrome really is tough. And one of the things that I have realized with my own imposter syndrome and coaching high achievers is it goes a little bit to goal setting. And we'll do a whole episode on imposter syndrome, but goal setting and celebration. And bear with me for a second. But when we are high achievers and we're constantly looking towards that next step in our career, that next goal, that next achievement, we're constantly focused on the future for so long that when we get there, it's almost like, wait a minute,
Huh.
we're here? Like I was so focused on it for so long that it almost doesn't feel real. That when we get there, we feel lost without another goal to achieve to. So as soon as we get a new level, we set a new goal to get to the next level.
Hmm.
And what's missing is that celebration piece of celebrating, oh my God, I did it. I worked so hard and so long for this. Let's take a minute and celebrate the fact that I actually did the damn thing before setting the next goal to move forward. But so often, a lot of times, high achievers, neurodivergence, a lot of people who have this sense of achievement as their North Star, once they get it, it's on to the next.
Yeah, and it's almost like there's no appreciation,
Yeah.
and forgive me if I'm wrong here, but it's almost like that appreciation, taking that moment, almost like allows your psyche to like graduate into the understanding that you are now this new level, right?
Yes.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
But then you start believing it. Like you have taken the moment to graduate in your brain to really cement in, I did this thing. I deserve it. I worked hard. Look at all the evidence for what I've done in order to achieve this thing. And the more you believe it, the more that you can sound confident talking about your achievements so that other people can see it too.
That's interesting how often we just go through life just grabbing the next achievement, the next thing I got to do, I got to accomplish.
Downplaying it.
And we never appreciate the win that we have before.
I know.
And then all of a sudden we're grasping at straws to understand why we're unhappy, why we're not feeling good, why we're looking for others to assign our value, right? Because we're not assigning our own value when we're being awesome. Wow.
I know. We are truly awesome people, and yet our brains sometimes just want to bring us down. And there's enough people out there, right? So this is our call to you as a high achiever. to remember who the F you are. You're incredible. So here's an activity. If you struggle from imposter syndrome, here's a way to kind of counteract that. When you achieve things, write it down. Have a list, right? We talked about a kudos folder, having an Attagirl or Attaboy folder, or a wins folder, or a notebook where you write down your achievements. And it could be, Kara's badass folder, whatever it is that you want, right? Where you're writing these things down so that when that imposter syndrome feeling comes up of, are you really going to go after that? Are you really sure you deserve that? You can open that notebook up and say, yes, I do. It's right here. Look at all the things that I've accomplished in order to get to this point, because your brain will rely on facts and you need to give them the facts.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. It's almost like hacking your own algorithm.
Yeah.
Let's keep this train rolling.
Right, what's the next one?
Number 4 for me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the fear of change or loss. Oof, this is a tough one. This one's really tough because, moving up in your career, moving on, right? It always involves leaving behind the familiar. It involves leaving behind familiar routines, practices, colleagues, work environments. And in all honesty, this is something that I've struggled with in the past, where you almost get complacent because you enjoy the environment so much, right? You enjoy the people you work with. You might not necessarily enjoy all aspects of it, but parts of it are enjoyable. So we end up sticking around longer than we should because we're not necessarily feeling hurt or feeling that or we don't want to feel the loss, that hurt of losing those coworkers, losing those colleagues. And honestly, it can really make professionals hesitant to pursue career advancement opportunities. In fact, I was speaking with somebody earlier today about this very thing, because he has a sense of attachment to his career, to his identity within the organization, right, as a leader there. And now he's got to go make this new identity again in a new environment. And that's hard.
It is hard, right? I mean, when you think about the people that you interact with, right, especially pre-pandemic, when everyone was going into the office, when you spend the majority of your day at an office or with your colleagues and your coworkers, there is this sense of camaraderie, especially if you have a great team, or even if in a toxic environment, if you've trauma bonded, right? There are a lot of people that I have spoken to that feel this sense of fear or attachment to their colleagues, where they don't want to leave and potentially leave their colleagues in a worse situation, or they don't want to leave because they've developed such a good camaraderie with their coworkers, or just the fear of change and the loss of a good salary or a great routine, or a remote work opportunity, whatever it is that your current job affords you, risking giving up whatever you have in order to go after something else. And one of the things that I have found time and time and time again is we've spoken to professionals at all stages of their career, from just out of college all the way up to 67, 68, 69, still wanting to work and not retire. And what I've heard, and both of us have heard from a lot of older professionals that have given up some of what they really wanted in their career out of loyalty to employers, coworkers, family, etc., is a lot of regret. A lot of regret and a lot of resentment. A lot of, I really wish that I had gone back and made this change earlier in my career, but I didn't because I was promised something, or I felt loyal, or I really wanted to help whatever it is, right? And I'm going to touch on this in our bonus fear, but what I always say is the only loyalty that you can and should have in your career is to yourself and to your family. Because at the end of the day, and we've all seen this in the pandemic, at the end of the day, your company is not going to have the same loyalty that sometimes you may have to your company. And we've all seen this. And so what I always recommend is, when there's this fear of change, when there's the fear of loss, a good way to reframe this is, what could I be gaining?
Hmm.
If I were to make this change, what could I gain? And you might even need to do the old-fashioned pro and con list, right? Like, what am I missing currently or what am I missing out on by holding myself back?
Hmm.
And what could I be gaining if I were to make a change? And sometimes focusing on the opportunities is a really good way to help be aware of this fear when it creeps up and redirect your brain from the negative.
I love that. I really love using that technique. That's awesome. I'm
Yeah.
going to try that.
Cool. What's the last official one?
Our last official one, number 5, it's the fear of settling. And many job seekers fear settling for a job that does not align with their passions and their values or their long-term goals. And in fact, so many individuals over the past 3 years in the job search have done this very thing because we've seen the fear, the uncertainty in the marketplace, in the media, letting us know like things are not ideal. And so you should make sure that you have your security for your future buttoned up, right? And so all of us are having to make tough decisions with that fight or flight mentality. And some of us may be, settling for compensation package that are much below what we deserve because we hear of the market just not being great. So the first number that comes back, yeah, absolutely, you just jump on board, but without doing research of what the actual marketplace is offering in that area at that level, and knowing exactly what you could potentially get in terms of max compensation or negotiate to get more. It really can be a situation where fear ends up putting you in a position that doesn't provide long-term fulfillment or growth potential for you, your career, and it's going to cause job seekers to hesitate and become overly selective in their search. And honestly, hesitation in the job search, being overly selective, overthinking things, that is only going to cause you not to be in the best state of mind as you're going through the job search.
Mhm. So this relates a lot to what we talked about in the first episode of this podcast, right? We talked about one of the best tips that we could give job seekers is to have multiple opportunities going at any given time, right? And the reason why, there's so many reasons why that's so beneficial, right? The first reason is if you're interviewing at a company and you're only interviewing at that company, well, I got to be honest with you, they're interviewing multiple candidates, right? So when you're only interviewing at one company and they're interviewing multiple candidates, who has the power? They do. The company does, right? And so when that tends to happen, when job seekers are hopping from a one company interview cycle to another, one thing that happens is it really elongates your job search, right? Because sometimes these companies' hiring processes can be months, which is
Mm.
ridiculous in and of itself. But it also creates this underlying level of desperation and fear in your job search because every cycle you're giving the power to an organization and not to yourself. So, how do we overcome this? We go back to what we said in that first episode, which is have multiple opportunities going at any given time. Here's why this is going to help out. And there's other tactical things that are going to help you out with this fear too. What I always recommend is having your toolbox ready, right? So with this one, your toolbox is going to be multiple opportunities at any given time. This way, you're going to be able to interview multiple companies, find out whether or not they're a good fit for you or not, and hopefully find yourself in a multiple offer situation where you can leverage offers against each other. That's the first thing. The second thing is you are able to generate opportunities so that if one does not pan out, you are in this opportunity generation mode where you could just get another one, right? You are constantly generating. And how we recommend doing this is by networking and reaching out to people on LinkedIn. That's one thing. Um, and the other reason why we recommend this is because it's going to benefit you in so many different ways. You're in multiple interview situations, you're learning how to tell your story over and over again, and you're learning about different cultures of different organizations. So you can determine, hey, I just talked to this ABC organization. They have a culture that is like this. I have to go into the office. That doesn't sound like me. I don't think I'm going to be happy there. So instead of that only being your one option, and right away you're not going to be happy there, but you're desperate, so you're going to take it and you settle, you're not in that situation anymore. You get to feel empowered and ask the right questions and say, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I want to negotiate for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And this leads into my bonus fear, which is the fear of missing out. And in that first podcast episode on YouTube, we had a comment that was, if I am doing multiple opportunities at any given time, and one comes in with an offer and I like it, but then 2 weeks later, another company comes in with a better offer, what do I do? And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. At the end of the day, the only unit that you need to be loyal to in your career is you and your family, right? Because why are you working so hard anyways? Is it to make the company more money? Is it to make the company less expenses? No. Your why at the end of the day is to make sure that that your family is taken care of, right? That you have enough money to live a life well lived. If that's your true why, then at the end of the day, you have to go back to you and your family. And so if you accept an offer in a job search and 2 weeks later, your dream company comes back and they're like, hey, here's a better offer, it is okay to professionally, let me caveat, professionally, we don't want to burn any bridges here, go back to the first company and say, hey, I want to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. I appreciate the fact that you extended this offer. I loved getting to know your company. However, my dream company came back with an even better offer, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to decline so that I can go move on with my career over here. However, please let's stay in touch. And if I have someone in my network that would be able to fill this role, I will absolutely send them your way, right? So there is a really great way to handle this. And at the end of the day, you're just people, making sure that you're finding a good fit for both you and your team that you're going to be working on. And at the very end of the day, you're just a person trying to find a job that's going to pay you money to live a life well lived, where you're actually happy and making an impact, right?
That's what we all want.
Right. So these fears and how to overcome them and feeling like you're missing out, right? Let's talk about that bonus one. How to reverse engineer that is wherever you are is where you are, right? And if you know that you are doing everything right and being authentic to who you are, then you won't be missing out. You won't be missing out. And so we go back to having as many opportunities as possible and talking to the right people so that you know and you can make the decision that's best for you and your family.
It's all about alignment, really.
It really is.
It's about alignment to your goals and making sure that you have the structure and a checklist to make sure that you're doing the right things. Because if you're not doing the right things, you are going to feel some sort of way, right? If we're not showing up, those fears are justifiable if we're not doing the right thing. So we hope that these tips that we talked about and these fears that we went over today help you illuminate what might be happening for you in your career, in your job search, because we really, really believe that overcoming these allow you to stand at the forefront of your job search in the most powerful manner that you can.
Absolutely. Well, we hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Next week, for episode number 5, we're going to be talking about work-life balance, the unreachable dream. If you enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a 5-star review. We would absolutely appreciate any 5-star review on your favorite podcasting platform. It helps us to reach more people so that they can watch these episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend or colleague who might be experiencing some fears in their career or their job search. Your feedback means a lot to us and helps others discover the Career Advancement Academy. Thanks for listening.